Hey everybody, I'm Ian Lowe of Lform Design, founder and owner, head of business development, and we are specialists in B2B websites. Jeff?
My name is Jeff Karomi. I'm the art director here at Lform. I've got 15 years experience working design, SEO, and user experience, and especially working with B2B clients.
Great. And Jeff and I have been working together for almost 8 years now. My background is actually in industrial design, but have been doing or creating websites for over 20 years. And Jeff, you've been in this field for how many years now?
15 plus change, probably.
15 plus change. Nice. And so what we're going to do here is we are going to critique homepage designs. This was a previous client, Monitoring Solutions, that you're seeing in front of you. They unfortunately were recently acquired by ESC, but we thought it'd be a good place to start in regards to a website that we created. I don't know, Jeff, how long ago did we do this?
It probably have to be 7 years ago. Probably 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that time range. Long enough for me not to remember.
And then ultimately, we are just going to be reviewing the homepage today, not the mobile view, not interior pages. And since we do know what the client does, we're gonna pretend that we don't know from the onset. So first and foremost, can we tell, based upon the 3-second rule, can we tell what they do or what they sell? So Jeff, what do you think?
Well, looking at it right now, the first headline here, now offering complete source emissions testing and stack testing. So had I not known the client, may not have known exactly what source emissions testing and stack testing are specifically. However, there are a lot of clues here. So if I bring down a little annotation, so stacks, they do have kind of image that brings in smokestacks towards the top. They also do have very clear kind of imagery going on their main directionals here. So it does give you some idea, and you can kind of see, all right, so this has something, emissions is a keyword, stack testing, still a little unsure what that is. However, compliance monitoring, process monitoring, tunnel monitoring, that all kind of makes sense.
I would agree with that statement. I think I wish it was a little bit more verbose, maybe beyond the hero headline that they have here. I wish they, we had suggested to them that we put like a sub headline or descriptive statement below the introductory text there. So, but you're right, the directionals, those 3 images stacked below the hero image, do a good job of really displaying what they sell. So cool. So I think they passed the 3-second rule. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say it's probably, let's say like 7 out of 10, could be better.
7 out of 10? All right, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. All right, so I'm biased though. So the next question is, who are they selling to? What's the audience? So what are your thoughts, Jeff? I mean, again, we have this, we're biased, or we have extensive knowledge on what they sell and do. But if we were pretending here.
Yeah, I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's not really evident. So everything is very much product focused, right? We have this compliance monitoring box, this tunnel monitoring device up here that's attached to the roof. Overall, good imagery for these, but the problem is I can't see, is it engineers? Is it people running plants? There's no human element to this. So it's a little hard to look at it and go, okay, I kind of see. You kind of have to infer secondarily from this type of equipment that it would probably be someone on the more technical side, an engineer, someone running a plant like that, is definitely not geared towards your mom and pop, that's for sure. So yeah, it's a lot of inference through the types of things that they're showing you, that it's a little more on the technical side.
Yeah, for process monitoring, we're seeing the cables, the wires, we're seeing industrial equipment in the imagery. So I guess it could be inferred, like you mentioned, engineers, engineering. That's probably who they're selling primarily to. Um, However, you're right. Maybe if they showcased an engineer reviewing some type of technical drawing or some type of technical drawing on a monitor, that might help the situation, right? Because ultimately we need to see ourselves when we're selling. So if I'm
Yeah, I mean,
selling,
people,
no, go ahead, Jeff.
yeah, I mean, that's one thing, and that comes down to a piece of human psychology, right? If you put a person on a page, people are immediately going to gravitate towards that, and you can actually use that to your advantage. So if you want to push someone towards an action that they want to take on a website, like what do I do next? Those can be good ways of doing it. It can also be good to avoid it if you really want someone to focus on your products. Putting a face on the page is immediately going to draw all the attention away. And that's a lot about just understanding kind of the psychology of how humans interact with each other. A lot of this is analog to face.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly agree with everything you stated. So cool. All right. So let's scroll down this page a little bit. I think they did a good job. We did a good job of, we have everything that's really primary is above that fold, that imaginary line. And as we scroll down, so it looks like heavy on the text when we scroll down slightly, right? And then we get into their featured product, quick links, testimonial. We get into their blog here, or news. And we have sign up for their newsletter, and obviously their key partners. So now looking at the overall design, thoughts and feelings, Jeff. Let's just talk about fonts first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the font choice here is pretty good. I mean, it looks a little more of a technical side, right? If you look at some of these letter forms here, for instance, the O is always a good indicator. It's kind of more on the oval side of things, a little squarish, and that can be good for industrial applications, having a bit of weight to it. Overall, the headlines are very readable. Well, until we get to the sort of this middle part down here, this becomes a little dense and a little unappealing. It feels like it breaks up the page quite a bit. And that's most likely because of this little area that got added in towards the top,
Right.
like this is something that happens a lot, especially in company acquisitions, is that something needs to go up, right? A PR department says, hey, get this message up here, but there really isn't a good area to put it. So it kind of gets shoehorned. And the unfortunate side effect of that is that it kind of breaks up the user flow and going down their page. Also kind of notable here is that, this would probably work as a much bigger headline, but there is no actual kind of about headline in this area. So this makes it difficult for someone to skim. Users, when they come to a website, they have what we call, they're looking for a piece of information, and they're looking for that information sent. And headlines are a good way of providing that information sent that they can latch onto and go, okay, that's what I'm looking for. That's the area I need to go in to investigate further.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they, like you said, they shoehorn this into this area. I mean, ultimately, it would have been best if they had, modified this, or taken the hero area and utilized this to, showcase the acquisition. So yeah, and it's going to be lost if you are, like you mentioned, if someone's skimming down this quickly, they're really not going to see this. So yeah, but let's talk about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if you go back up, the one thing I noticed is that while a lot of this page is pretty standard with its capitalization, this is kind of a little bit of a outlier, right? This looks like it should be title case. This looks like it isn't, obviously. So those are kind of those little details that are really easy for people to miss too. Knowing how your headlines are supposed to show up. There's only so much that development can kind of build into that. All caps is kind of an easy way to get around it. But these are kind of like the little details that when someone comes, they start ticking off a little box in your head, go, that's weird. And it's distracting most of all to someone coming to your website.
It's almost subconscious, right? They won't know how to sometimes verbalize that it's distracting. You and I are able to understand that or form it into words, but ultimately it's their subconscious that's weighing in on their decision-making process. And bad design or bad flow can lead to definite impressions, right? So
right. And all those little things, they do stack up in your head. And you may not know why you think a company isn't as professional as it should be. But those things are kind of, like you said, subconscious. They add up to this little stack that says, that looks like a mistake. This is spelled wrong. Maybe they don't have the attention to detail. And all of that, you kind of, in a second, go, you're getting a lot of messages from those little tiny items of what a company is. Because this is your first impression. A homepage is generally the first impression you have with someone that you don't even know that you're introducing yourself to.
Agreed, wholeheartedly agree. So cool. All right, let's talk about some of the other items on this page. So let's talk about the featured area and the quick links. I mean, quick links were very popular about a decade plus ago. I forgot that we actually had this in the site. So thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, quick links can be good or bad. Like you said, they were kind of that sidebarred quick link was a big web pattern about 10 years ago. They have gone a little out of style. The thing that they do well, though, is that let's say if I'm scanning this page and I'm looking for really, this is almost resources. This area, this quick link area, is almost resources and services, right? So they do allow you to kind of look and go, okay, I'm actually looking for, oh, there we go, support contracts, parts and repairs, right? That would be that they do that well, where they get you to a place you want to go. But yeah, you don't see them too common. Generally, we would take these out these days and break each one of these areas in their own kind of what we call a directional. So these would generally be, if you had 3 of them put across the website like this instead, right? And that would give someone, that would ease their viewing of the website, and it also allow you to get a little more text in with explanation and headlines, which is always a benefit on the SEO side of things.
Absolutely. And then you also compare them up with visuals, right? So some people are better visually, utilizing icons or utilizing actual photographs or stock photography for that matter, right? So quicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, quicker someone can find something, usually the better. All right. So what are your thoughts on featured product area?
So really the big offender here is their image. It was obviously not kind of made for this area. And while I understand it is kind of a system and it is very hard to show software sometimes, possibly it would be better to use, even if it was some kind of image that kind of illustrated the type of person to use this system. Because right now, I mean, I'm looking at this, I don't really know what this is. I could tell it's some type of software, but I'm not really sure what it's trying to get across to me.
I mean, maybe if we had taken some stock photography, Photoshopped this screenshot of the software on someone utilizing a PC near the equipment, or, even staged the shot, I agree, it would have been a lot more evident. Okay, this is, the SEMDAS software, and it's living and breathing within an environment that it would be utilized in. So ultimately, I'm not saying this is okay, but at least they put a visual of the actual software. Sometimes our clients don't want to showcase even a screenshot because they're afraid of letting the competition see what's underneath the hood, so to speak. So
Yeah, that's very true. Software can be difficult because there are some very powerful pieces of software that really don't look that good. We use Screaming Frog here, a lot of Lform, and while it's an awesome, super powerful tool, the interface very much looks like something out of 10 years ago.
Hmm.
So if you ever go to Screaming Frog's website, they do have some screenshots, but they kind of avoid it. They use illustrations and they use other kinds of ways to explain what the software does versus showing you kind of this old dated looking interface. And particularly in B2B, that is pretty common. I mean, if you look at what this software looks like, this is not, it looks a little dated. It looks a little old Windows kind of style, but at the end of the day, people do want to know that it is software, and the benefits of showing it sometimes outweigh kind of a little more of the dated look. But that really is a consideration that one has to make when it comes to their overall brand online.
So I don't want to hone in too much because you and I both know that people pretty much scroll to about here and that's about it. We do have a testimonial and the blog and the call to action, or I should say the sign up for the newsletter way below. But let's talk about the color palette. Let's talk about the icons, or maybe in this case, we don't even have any icons. It's mostly imagery, like we have the stock photography here for the testimonial. So let's talk about color palette and imagery overall.
Yeah. So the first thing about the color palette is this is probably like blue and orange. And while, obviously at Lform, we're very partial to our orange. This is a really standard color palette, and blue can do a lot of good things for you. It does show stability. It does show, we have been around, it's calming to people, but it also is the most common color for B2B companies. When we think about color, maybe that's what you want to get across. And Monitoring Solutions is one of those companies that probably would do well to have this kind of color scheme. You can see in the logo, they're kind of splitting the orange and blue. They're having a little more fun with it, but they definitely could play up the orange more as a differentiator from a lot of other companies. We haven't looked at many of their competitors in quite a while, but I would bet money that most of them go with main blue, possibly some green, with environmental emissions testing stuff. But it is very standard color palette. It works well. Colors do draw your eyes around, using the orange to underline links, try to draw you around, but it does get a little bit blue, right? Where if we go up to that testimonials area, that really is the only area we see on here that has some hints coming in, some little accent colors, nice orange button. And you can see using accent colors like this button can work pretty well because it really does draw your attention over here.
All right. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. All right, let's talk about the navigation here. All right, so I don't want to jump into the secondary pages, but you can see here that, let's see. So this does have on-click drop-down, traditional drop-down. Most of the pages, obviously, based upon here, they just go to primary pages. So I think essentially for touch devices like the iPad or iPad Pro for that matter, which is essentially now being utilized as a laptop, this navigation is very touchscreen friendly, yet at the same time also great for your standard desktop and laptop. So, and I think it's, it doesn't fail that rule of, I usually tell people to keep their navigation elements, number of items in their main nav to 6 or less, and we're at 6. So it's not overwhelming. The only thing I think I would have kept this to testing instead of source testing, and then service and support, I would have just kept it to support. Try to keep it very clean, to the point, truncating navigation elements. And then once you're in a page, you can have verbose headlines if you want, or page titles for that matter. So anything else to add with the navigation?
Yeah, I mean, navigation is kind of a tricky beast to handle sometimes, because it'll do two things straight off the bat. The first, it'll tell someone just generally from your main categories what areas they can access, but it'll also tell you how deep your website is. And knowing Monsol's website, there are a lot more products and services and items within this website that the drop downs aren't really telling you about. So it's telling you, oh, this is actually a pretty shallow website, when in fact there are a few levels of this website onion to kind of peel down to. Like you said, you know, a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, why isn't this a rollover, right? It's an on click. And that's always a deliberate decision with us. Like you said, with those touchscreen devices, you have to make sure that it works on a large touchscreen device. As an iPod Pro user, that I run into that issue pretty constantly, and it is very frustrating. The other thing is that while there are more areas to this website than this initial navigation is going to be telling you about, there is a pretty prominent search bar up here. And, you know, if we were redoing this is probably one of those areas where we would have probably dumped search.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, we don't find a lot of people, especially in B2B, end up using search. Really, the only area you want to use it is if you have a very extensive product catalog, that, let's say you're selling, you know, sourced metals, and there's a lot of different terms, a lot of different formulas that someone may want to search, and you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items, then search becomes very powerful because it allows you to find that stuff quicker without having to get bogged down. But with many websites, and Monsol especially, you know, this could easily be dumped. I'm sure if we looked into the analytics, we would not see a lot of usage of search in their website.
Yeah, definitely no need for search, right? I mean, their site is not that extensive. So, and I'm sure, you know, as we know, doing search well, let's leave it in the domain of Google. Google does a much better job of spidering websites than on-site searches. I mean, maybe Amazon is the exception to the rule, but more often than not, search is just very hard to get right. All right, so now let's go into SEO. Let's see if we made this an H1. Nice. So we did make this an H1. We did something right. That's good. And let's see what we did for our call to action. Great. So we called it a class action. It's just your normal div. So that's fine. All right. Let's see what we did for these directionals. All right. We made that an H2. Awesome. So we have our H1 for our hero statement, right? And then we have our H2s for our directionals, our main categories, our device categories. And then I'm just curious. And an H3 here, wow, this was built really well. I wonder who did it. Cool, so that's good to know. Let's review an image. Let's see if we actually have any alt tags on these images. All right, so we don't have an alt tag on this image. Shame on us. That was probably, let's see if we have an alt tag on this. Well, the alt tag says testimonials, so I guess that's kind of right. It should be more descriptive in nature.
Yeah, it could be a little better. And while we do usually look through alt tags for SEO, really accessibility is what we have in mind for those kinds of things. People who have, you know, are reading the website through a screen reader or a non-browser alternative. You know, that stuff's very important. You can get away with it. Like, this is more of a decorative image. It's not really descriptive. So you could get away with that one when it comes to accessibility standards. But generally it is pretty helpful to people.
All right, so now let's go ahead and let's go do the good old lighthouse test. Let's generate the report.
While you're doing that, one important piece of SEO that I'd love to point out here is that you're actually seeing keywords in their headlines. A lot of times, let's erase that one. A lot of times people will forget that these H1s, H2s are super important to Google. And you can see that, you know, source emissions testing, stack testing, even the compliance monitoring, process monitoring, you know, Google's reading all of this stuff. And while you do want to make headlines, that are that are appealing to users, you also have to make sure your keywords are represented as well.
Absolutely. So from the Lighthouse, or better known as Google Page Speed, I prefer Lighthouse, which is native to Google Chrome. You can see overall the performance is okay, right? We always shoot for 90 plus, so in the A rating. And you can see here we're a solid, well, for best practices, we're a solid C, and we're in the B range here for performance accessibility. I'm sure if we took another stab at this, we could definitely increase the overall. But look, for a performance standard, hitting 89 is it's pretty darn good. So
yeah, as well as keeping in mind that this website is at least 6 years old as well.
Right, exactly. Last but not least, let's go see if Google Analytics and or Google Tag Manager. So let's do a refresh. Let's see if Google, so we have Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. We're both installed on this site. So at least they know how many people are coming to the website, and they can also push other tracking codes via Google Tag Manager. So that's great. So any final words that you would like to add to this, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, really at the end of the day, looking back at this, this is probably one of the 4th or 5th website I designed being at Lform. All in all, we've done a pretty good job. I've seen their competitors before. They've done, they don't do as well. I know for a fact that this website really has crushed their competitors on SEO. And so all in all, that I would say, if I had to give it a number, possibly 6 out of 10. Just knowing how old this website.
I think that's harsh.
That it's nearly.
I think it's harsh.
Really,
that's a solid. That's almost an F. That's like a D rating. I don't know.
Well, I'm going, but yeah. Well, I mean, there's room to improve. At a certain point, your website gets old. You need to refresh it. And we always recommend like 4 or 5 years. You have to look at doing that, and then that's where I would ding this the most. There are definitely stuff that had they wanted us to do, we could have definitely made some improvements and pushed them even forward on their SEO and marketing goals.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would give this a solid like C, B minus. I think in this day and age, this site still holds up. Like you said, there's definitely room for improvement, but ultimately, I think it passes the 3-second rule. I essentially know what they're selling. I can easily find what I need to find out, and then I can start the conversation, right? That's the majority of B2B marketing websites. You want to get in, you want to figure out if they're the right partner or the right person to contact. And if they are, you have overall good first impressions via the website, then you can continue the conversation by obviously contacting or filling out a form. I mean, the newsletter, great. Maybe you're not interested in starting the conversation. Newsletter sign up, just smart, right? So it's a low hanging fruit that I oftentimes recommend. So yeah, this was fun. Thanks for doing this, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.